Most people think rebuilding is something you do after everything falls apart, after failure, after loss, after life forces you to change. But what if rebuilding isn't about ruins at all? What if it's about realizing quietly, honestly, that the life you're living no longer matches the person you know you could become? There comes a moment in everyone's life when you pause and ask yourself uncomfortable questions. Why am I settling? Why do I keep repeating the same patterns? Why do I feel capable of more, yet stuck where I am? That moment isn't weakness, it's awareness. And awareness is the first sign that growth is calling. Rebuilding yourself doesn't mean you failed. It means you've matured enough to see beyond excuses and comfort. It means you're brave enough to admit that potential unused becomes regret over time. The truth is, nothing changes until you do. Not your results, not your direction, not your future. Today is not about fixing everything at once. It's about recognizing that you are not finished, and you don't have to stay the same. You can rethink your habits, reset your standards, and redesign your approach to life. The question isn't whether change is possible. The real question is whether you're willing to take responsibility for becoming more than you've been so far. Personal responsibility is the moment a person stops waiting for life to change and starts deciding to change themselves. It is the quiet but powerful realization that where you are right now is the result of choices made, actions taken, habits repeated, and attitudes maintained over time. This understanding can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes the safety net of excuses, but it is also the most freeing idea a person can adopt. When you accept responsibility, you take back control. You are no longer a victim of circumstances, you become the manager of your direction. Many people blame external factors for their condition, lack of opportunity, difficult upbringing, unfair systems, or other people's behavior. While these factors can influence life, they do not determine its final outcome. Responsibility does not deny hardship. It simply refuses to let hardship have the final say. The moment you say, "This is my life and I am accountable for how it turns out," you place yourself in a position of power. Blame weakens ambition, but responsibility strengthens resolve. Rebuilding yourself cannot begin without this shift because rebuilding requires ownership. You cannot fix what you refuse to acknowledge. If your finances are unstable, responsibility means admitting that your spending, saving, or earning habits need improvement. If your health is declining, it means recognizing the role of your daily routines, food choices, and discipline. If your relationships are strained, it means examining how you communicate, listen, and respond. Responsibility turns problems into projects instead of complaints. Taking responsibility also sharpens awareness. You start paying attention to your patterns, how you react under pressure, how you spend your time, how you talk to yourself when things go wrong. This awareness is essential because rebuilding is not about changing the world around you first. It is about changing the inner framework that guides your decisions. Without responsibility, self-improvement becomes shallow motivation. With responsibility, it becomes structured progress. Another powerful aspect of responsibility is that it eliminates waiting. Many people delay growth while waiting for motivation, confidence, or perfect conditions. Responsibility understands that progress begins before motivation appears. You act because it is necessary, not because it is easy. You discipline yourself to do what needs to be done even when emotions resist. This mindset builds strength, and strength produces confidence as a byproduct. Responsibility also transforms failure. Instead of seeing failure as proof of inadequacy, you begin to see it as feedback. When something doesn't work, responsibility asks, "What can I learn from this?" rather than, "Who is at fault?" This approach keeps you moving forward. Every setback becomes information, every mistake becomes instruction, and every disappointment becomes a lesson that sharpens future decisions. In rebuilding yourself, responsibility demands consistency. It means showing up on the days when no one is watching, correcting yourself when you slip, and recommitting when old habits resurface. It is easy to take responsibility once, it is harder to take it daily. Yet daily responsibility compounds, just like daily neglect compounds. One strengthens your character, the other weakens it. Responsibility also reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who reacts to life and start seeing yourself as someone who designs it. This shift changes how you speak, how you plan, and how you carry yourself. Your standards rise because you know your future is connected to what you tolerate today. You begin to measure decisions not by convenience but by consequence. Importantly, responsibility does not mean harsh self-criticism. It means honest self-evaluation. Beating yourself up leads to discouragement, while taking responsibility leads to correction. The goal is not guilt. The goal is growth. You acknowledge where you are, accept that improvement is required, and then take deliberate steps forward. When responsibility becomes part of your character, rebuilding yourself stops feeling overwhelming. You stop trying to fix everything at once and instead focus on what you can control today, your effort, your attitude, your habits, your learning. Each small responsible action reinforces the belief that change is possible, and that belief quietly reshapes behavior, priorities, and long-term direction as you continue choosing responsibility over excuses, action over avoidance, and ownership over surrender. Your philosophy is the invisible framework through which you interpret life. It is the collection of beliefs, assumptions, values, and attitudes that guide your decisions, often without your awareness. Long before results show up in your bank account, health, or relationships, they first take shape in your philosophy. That is why rebuilding yourself requires a careful examination of how you think about work, effort, responsibility, time, and possibility. If the foundation is weak, no amount of surface change will last. Most people never consciously choose their philosophy. They inherit it from family, culture, past experiences, and emotional reactions to success or failure. Over time, these ideas harden into truths that govern behavior. Statements like, "This is just how I am," "Life is unfair," or "Success is for lucky people," seem harmless, but they quietly dictate limits. When your philosophy is flawed, it produces consistent but disappointing results. Not because you lack talent, but because your thinking restricts your actions. Rebuilding yourself means challenging these inherited beliefs. You must ask whether your current philosophy serves the future you want or merely protects your comfort. Comfort-based thinking often avoids risk, resists discipline, and justifies mediocrity. Growth-based thinking accepts discomfort as the price of improvement. A simple shift in philosophy from avoiding pain to pursuing progress can completely alter the direction of a life. Your philosophy determines how you respond to difficulty. When challenges arise, one mindset looks for excuses while another looks for solutions. One says, "This shouldn't be happening," while the other says, "What does this require of me?" That difference shapes resilience. People with strong philosophies do not avoid problems, they expect them. They understand that obstacles are not interruptions but part of the process. This understanding keeps them steady when others quit. The way you view time is also philosophical. Some people see time as something to spend, while others see it as something to invest. That single belief influences daily behavior, how much you learn, how well you plan, and how seriously you take preparation. A person who believes time is abundant procrastinates. A person who believes time is valuable acts with urgency. Over years, that belief creates either regret or progress. Philosophy also shapes standards. What you tolerate becomes your normal. If your philosophy allows shortcuts, poor habits, or low expectations, your results will match that tolerance. When you raise your standards mentally, behavior follows. You begin to ask more of yourself, not because someone demands it, but because your philosophy demands it. This internal standard is far more powerful than external pressure. Rebuilding yourself requires replacing passive beliefs with active ones. Passive philosophies wait for motivation, inspiration, or permission. Active philosophies take initiative. They assume responsibility for learning, improvement, and discipline. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the question becomes, "What can I do differently?" That shift turns life into a process of intentional creation rather than random reaction. Your philosophy influences how you define success and failure. If success is defined only by external approval or comparison, you will constantly feel behind. If failure is defined as proof of inadequacy, you will avoid growth. A stronger philosophy sees success as progress and failure as education. This definition removes fear and encourages experimentation, which is essential when rebuilding yourself. Changing your philosophy does not happen through motivation alone. It happens through exposure to new ideas, reflection, and deliberate practice. Reading, listening, and thinking deeply challenge old assumptions. As your philosophy evolves, your decisions naturally change. You don't force new habits. They emerge from new thinking. When your philosophy aligns with growth, discipline becomes easier, effort feels purposeful, and setbacks lose their power. You begin to live intentionally rather than habitually. Over time, the quiet consistency of aligned thinking reshapes your actions. Actions reshape your results, and those results reinforce the philosophy that built them, gradually transforming who you are and what you believe is possible. Small disciplines are the quiet forces that shape a life. They rarely draw attention and they rarely feel dramatic, yet they hold more power than bursts of motivation or short-lived enthusiasm. Rebuilding yourself depends on understanding that lasting change does not come from a single bold decision, but from repeated, intentional actions practiced daily. The direction of your life is determined far more by what you do consistently than by what you do occasionally. Many people underestimate small actions because they do not produce immediate results. Reading a few pages of a book, waking up a little earlier, exercising for 20 minutes, or choosing a better response in a difficult conversation does not feel life-changing in the moment. Because the impact is delayed, people dismiss these actions as insignificant. Yet time is what gives small disciplines their power. When repeated daily, they compound, gradually shaping skills, character, and confidence. The opposite is also true. Small acts of neglect, skipping responsibility, avoiding effort, delaying decisions also compound. One missed day seems harmless. One excuse feels justified. But repeated over months and years, these small lapses quietly build frustration, regret, and limitation. Rebuilding yourself requires recognizing that discipline is not about intensity, it is about consistency. What you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while. Small disciplines work because they are manageable. Large goals often intimidate people into inaction, while small actions invite participation. You may not feel ready to completely transform your life, but you can commit to a small improvement today. You can read, learn, practice, or reflect for a short time. These manageable actions reduce resistance and build momentum. Once momentum exists, progress becomes natural rather than forced. Discipline also shapes identity. Each small action reinforces a belief about who you are. When you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you strengthen self-trust. When you break those promises repeatedly, confidence erodes. Rebuilding yourself requires restoring trust in your own word, and that trust is rebuilt through small, consistent disciplines. Over time, you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who improves, someone who can be relied upon. Another important aspect of small disciplines is that they operate regardless of mood. Motivation is unreliable, but discipline functions even when emotions fluctuate. On days when enthusiasm is low, small disciplines still get done because they have become routine. This creates stability. Your progress is no longer dependent on how you feel, it is guided by what you have committed to do. That stability is essential for rebuilding because it protects progress during difficult seasons. Small disciplines also allow for course correction. When habits are small and consistent, you can adjust them without overwhelming yourself. Rebuilding yourself is not about perfection, it is about refinement. You observe what works, what doesn't, and you make small adjustments. This flexibility keeps growth sustainable and prevents burnout. The accumulation of small disciplines eventually produces visible results. Skills improve, knowledge expands, health strengthens, confidence deepens. From the outside, it may look like sudden success, but in reality, it is the outcome of many quiet days of discipline. This understanding removes impatience. You stop chasing quick results and begin trusting the process. Consistency also builds resilience. When challenges arise, disciplined individuals do not collapse because their foundation is solid. They are used to showing up, adjusting, and continuing. Rebuilding yourself requires this resilience because growth is never linear. There will be setbacks, slow periods, and frustration. Small disciplines keep you moving forward even when progress feels invisible. Over time, these disciplines reshape your environment and your expectations. You begin to expect more from yourself, not through pressure, but through habit. Improvement becomes normal. Growth becomes part of your routine rather than a special event. The person you are becoming is shaped quietly, day by day, through choices that seem small but carry the weight of your future, steadily transforming effort into ability, intention into action, and consistency into lasting change. Learning is the foundation upon which personal growth is built. To rebuild yourself, you must first recognize that the person you are today is a reflection of what you have learned, accepted, and practiced up to this point. If you want a different outcome, you need new input. Improvement does not happen by wishing for change. It happens by acquiring new understanding and applying it with intention. Learning expands perspective, sharpens judgment, and equips you to make better decisions in the same situations that once held you back. Many people stop learning once formal education ends, assuming that experience alone is enough. Experience, however, only teaches when it is examined. Without learning, experience can turn into repetition rather than growth. Rebuilding yourself requires deliberate learning, not accidental exposure. It means choosing to study ideas that challenge your comfort, habits that stretch your discipline, and viewpoints that refine your thinking. Learning is the bridge between where you are and who you are capable of becoming. Learning also corrects blind spots. Everyone has areas they do not fully understand about money, health, relationships, communication, or mindset. These gaps silently limit progress. When you learn, you gain clarity. You start seeing patterns in your behavior and outcomes. You understand why certain efforts fail and why others succeed. This clarity prevents repeated mistakes and allows you to act with greater precision. Another powerful aspect of learning is that it builds confidence grounded in competence. Confidence without knowledge is fragile. It collapses under pressure. Confidence built on learning grows stronger with use. When you understand a subject, skill, or principle, you move with certainty. You speak with clarity, act with purpose, and respond with calmness. This kind of confidence is essential when rebuilding yourself because it reduces fear and hesitation. Learning also expands your sense of possibility. Before you learn, certain goals feel unrealistic or out of reach. After learning, those same goals appear achievable because you understand the path. Knowledge reduces mystery. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable once broken into steps. Learning transforms dreams into plans and plans into action. Rebuilding yourself through learning requires humility. You must accept that there are things you do not know and skills you have not yet developed. This humility is not weakness. It is openness. It keeps you adaptable. Those who refuse to learn remain stuck defending outdated beliefs, while those who embrace learning evolve with changing circumstances. Humility allows growth to continue regardless of age or past success. Learning is not limited to books or formal instruction. It includes observing others, listening carefully, reflecting on mistakes, and seeking feedback. Mentors, conversations, and even failure become sources of education when approached with the right mindset. The key is intentionality. Passive exposure rarely changes behavior, but intentional learning reshapes thinking. Consistent learning also disciplines the mind. It trains you to focus, to think critically, and to question assumptions. These mental skills are vital when rebuilding yourself because they prevent impulsive decisions and emotional reactions. A learning-oriented mind responds thoughtfully rather than reactively, which leads to better long-term outcomes. As learning accumulates, it influences habits. What you know affects what you do. When you learn about health, you treat your body differently. When you learn about finances, you manage money with greater care. When you learn about communication, relationships improve. Knowledge naturally demands application. The more you learn, the more your actions align with improvement. Rebuilding yourself through learning also creates momentum. Each new insight builds enthusiasm for the next. Progress becomes energizing rather than exhausting. You begin to see growth as a continuous process rather than a distant goal. Over time, learning becomes part of your identity. You become someone who seeks understanding, adapts quickly, and improves steadily, allowing knowledge to shape decisions, discipline to shape behavior, and wisdom to quietly redefine the direction of your life. Rebuilding yourself requires the courage to let go of what no longer serves you. Growth is not only about adding new habits, skills, or knowledge, it is also about releasing old patterns that keep you anchored to past limitations. Many people struggle to move forward not because they lack potential, but because they are holding on to beliefs, behaviors, and identities that belong to an earlier version of themselves. Letting go is difficult because it feels like loss, yet it is necessary because progress demands space. Old habits often feel familiar and safe, even when they are damaging. Comfort has a strong pull, and the mind prefers what it knows over what is uncertain. Rebuilding yourself means recognizing that familiarity is not the same as effectiveness. A habit that once helped you cope may now be preventing growth. Letting go of such habits requires honesty and patience because change disrupts routine and challenges self-image. Excuses are another weight that must be released. Excuses protect the ego by shifting responsibility outward, but they quietly drain personal power. When you justify inaction, you reinforce stagnation. Letting go of excuses is not about self-blame. It is about self-respect. It is the decision to stop explaining why something cannot be done and start exploring how it can be done. This shift opens doors that excuses keep closed. Limiting beliefs are often the hardest to release because they feel like truth. Beliefs about intelligence, worth, capability, or destiny are shaped early and reinforced through experience. Over time, they become invisible barriers. Rebuilding yourself requires questioning these beliefs rather than obeying them. You must ask whether they are facts or conclusions drawn from past events. Many beliefs lose their power once examined. Letting them go frees energy that was previously spent on self-doubt and hesitation. Letting go also applies to outdated identities. People often define themselves by past roles, failures, or labels. I'm not that kind of person. I've always been this way, or that's just who I am become statements that lock identity in place. Growth requires redefining yourself based on where you are going, not where you have been. Releasing an old identity can feel unsettling because it removes certainty, but it also creates opportunity. Emotional baggage must also be released. Resentment, guilt, regret, and unresolved anger occupy mental space and distort perspective. These emotions tie attention to the past and drain energy from the present. Letting go does not mean denying what happened. It means refusing to let it control your future. Rebuilding yourself requires emotional clarity, and clarity comes from acknowledging feelings without allowing them to dictate behavior. Fear is another element that must be confronted and released. Fear of failure, judgment, or uncertainty often disguises itself as caution or logic. While fear has a protective role, it becomes limiting when it prevents action. Letting go of fear does not mean eliminating it. It means choosing progress despite it. Each step taken in fear weakens its hold and builds confidence through experience. Letting go also demands patience. You cannot discard years of conditioning overnight. Old habits resurface, doubts return, and comfort tempts you back. Rebuilding yourself is not about never slipping. It is about not settling. Each time you recognize an old pattern and choose differently, you strengthen the new direction. Progress is measured by awareness and adjustment, not perfection. Releasing what no longer serves you creates space for growth. New habits, ideas, and relationships cannot thrive in a crowded mind. Letting go simplifies focus and clarifies priorities. You begin to act with intention rather than reaction. Over time, this process reshapes your inner environment, making it easier to build discipline, confidence, and clarity. Letting go is ultimately an act of trust. It is trusting that who you are becoming is more important than who you have been, and that growth requires sacrifice. When you release what holds you back, you allow new strength, insight, and direction to take its place, steadily transforming your mindset, behavior, and future as you continue choosing progress over comfort and possibility over familiarity. Understanding that you are a work in progress changes the way you relate to yourself and to life. Many people live with the silent pressure of feeling they must have everything figured out, that by a certain age they should be complete, confident, and free of mistakes. This belief creates frustration and self-judgment when reality does not match expectation. Recognizing that growth is ongoing removes that pressure and replaces it with patience. You stop demanding perfection from yourself and start allowing development. Seeing yourself as unfinished encourages learning and flexibility. When you believe you are already complete, feedback feels like criticism and change feels like threat. When you accept that you are evolving, feedback becomes information and change becomes opportunity. This mindset keeps you open to improvement. You no longer defend your limitations, you examine them. Rebuilding yourself requires this openness, because rigid identities resist growth. A work-in-progress mindset also transforms how you handle mistakes. Instead of interpreting errors as personal failure, you see them as part of the process. Mistakes become signals, not verdicts. This reduces fear and increases willingness to try. Growth depends on experimentation, and experimentation requires tolerance for imperfection. When you accept that you are learning, setbacks lose their power to discourage. This perspective also changes how you measure success. Rather than comparing yourself to others or to unrealistic standards, you compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Progress becomes the metric, not perfection. Small improvements gain significance. Consistency matters more than speed. This approach sustains motivation because it focuses on direction rather than distance. Being a work in progress also builds resilience. Growth is rarely smooth. There are periods of confusion, stagnation, and doubt. When you expect these phases, they no longer feel like failure. They feel like part of development. This expectation prevents quitting during difficult seasons. Rebuilding yourself requires endurance, and endurance is strengthened by understanding that struggle is temporary and instructive. This mindset also encourages responsibility without harshness. You hold yourself accountable for improvement, but you do not punish yourself for being human. Accountability guides correction while compassion maintains momentum. Without compassion, self-improvement becomes exhausting. Without accountability, it becomes meaningless. Seeing yourself as a work in progress balances both. Another important aspect is patience with timing. Growth unfolds differently for everyone. When you accept that development is ongoing, you stop rushing milestones and start focusing on mastery. You understand that depth takes time. Skills refine gradually. Character strengthens through repeated choices. This patience reduces anxiety and increases quality of effort. A work-in-progress identity also improves relationships. When you accept your own imperfections, you become more tolerant of others. You listen more and judge less. You understand that everyone is evolving at a different pace. This perspective fosters empathy and collaboration rather than competition. Personal growth expands outward into healthier interactions. This mindset keeps ambition alive without becoming destructive. You aim high, but you accept that the journey includes learning curves. You pursue excellence without demanding instant results. Rebuilding yourself becomes a lifelong project rather than a short-term fix. This keeps you engaged with growth rather than discouraged by its demands. Over time, seeing yourself as a work in progress builds inner stability. You are not shaken by temporary setbacks or overly inflated by small successes. Your identity is rooted in commitment to growth rather than outcomes. This stability allows steady progress even in changing circumstances. Accepting that you are not finished allows room for curiosity, courage, and renewal. Each phase of life becomes an opportunity to refine thinking, behavior, and direction. Rebuilding yourself becomes less about reaching a final version and more about continuous alignment between who you are, what you learn, and how you act, allowing growth to remain a constant, purposeful part of your life as you continue evolving with intention and awareness. As we come to the end of this message, remember this: rebuilding yourself is not a single decision made in a moment of inspiration. It is a series of choices made daily with intention. It begins when you accept responsibility for your life, examine the philosophy guiding your decisions, and commit to small disciplines that quietly shape your future. It grows stronger as you invest in learning, release what no longer serves you, and accept that growth is a lifelong process. You don't rebuild yourself to become someone else. You rebuild to become more of who you were meant to be. There will be days when progress feels slow and effort feels heavy. Those days do not mean you are failing, they mean you are building. Stay patient with the process and honest with yourself. Every small improvement matters, and every step forward counts more than you realize. The future you want is not created by chance, but by consistent choices aligned with growth. I wish you the courage to begin, the discipline to continue, and the belief to stay committed even when the results are not yet visible. Good luck on your journey of rebuilding yourself. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to invest in becoming better than you were yesterday.